Chronicles 21, 1 through 4. Satan took his stand against Israel and enticed David to take census of Israel. So what it is we see how Satan tempts Jesus in the New Testament. But David's the man after seeking God. He's the king. He's anointed. And so Satan's tempting him as the leader, as the king, to bring the whole nation of Israel down. And there was no point in this census. It was kind of, and it's pointed out here by Joab, but David, just enticed by Satan, takes numbers. And sometimes the things of this world and Satan may entice us to do something. We may get a trigger that don't seem too bad, but it's something God don't want us to do. And simply because it's something God don't want us to do, us doing it draws us away from God. And it in itself may not be something bad. Taking a census in itself wasn't bad. It was just an unwise decision and it wasn't something the Lord wanted done, so He wasn't to do this. And Satan used something simple here to start him having a falling away. And that's oftentimes how he works. The big stuff, the stuff we see as big sins, Satan don't even, because we take a stand against it. He works with the stuff we consider little and then gets us up to there. And that's how he worked with David. Here he takes this census. Later he takes Bathsheba. Later he has her husband killed, and it just mounts up. David said to Joab and the people's princes, "Go and take the census of Israel from Beersheba to Dan. Then bring it back to me and let me know the total." Now, Beersheba to Dan is pretty much the furthest city north being Dan, and Beersheba to south. So this is saying everywhere. It's just a fancy term for him to say, don't miss any place. So they're taking a census of all his kingdom, everybody. So they're going to get a full count. And he's trusting it to somebody he knows he can trust, which is important when we do things. But it's also important who we ask, because we see how he takes a stand in this next verse. Those that we ask and have work with us, sometimes it's always good to have a person take a stand and be like, no, God would want you to do this. Think about it this way. And David had that. Even though he rejected it, God puts that in our lives. And oftentimes it's hard for us to humble ourselves and say, well, they're right. We need to do it. I need to do it this way. But that's exactly why God puts in people in our life, so we can listen to them. In verse 3, Joab replied, "May the Lord multiply his people to 100 times what they are today. But my Lord King, are they not all my Lord's servants in any case? Why should the Lord insist this? Why should he involve Israel in guilt?" So he's telling him, you don't want to do this. God can make this army a lot bigger than it is already. God can do what he wants with this number. You don't have to worry about the count. Don't bring this on Israel. And there's people in our lives when we mess up beforehand telling us, you may not want to do this. You don't want to go down this road. You don't want to. And sometimes we listen, and sometimes we fall like David. But Joab was still there when David fell to bring him back up. And our friends will be. Joab wasn't trying to beat David down by saying, "Oh, don't take that count." He's trying to advise him so he could stay in God's will. Because we see in the next verse that Joab actually goes, even though follows his king's orders, even though it's unwise. But the king enforced his order on Joab, and Joab set out and traveled throughout all Israel, then returned to Jerusalem. So sometimes things are going to be put on us that we don't, that this wasn't Joab's sin. And some things are going to be out there in the world that we don't agree with, we don't have any part in, but it's something that is. And the way the world is, there's a lot of things out there that we don't believe in, but they still are the way they are. While we can say this ain't right, it's still happening. And that's the situation of Joab. He knew what was going on was wrong, but there wasn't anything he could really do about it. And that's where we can fall to today. You know, it ain't... Joab may have been in a place where he seemed like his voice was unheard. But the fact is, David would have remembered later Joab's voice. And there's a fact in times we may be ignored by what we say and may not be heard. But that ain't a reason not to speak. Joab still told David what was right. And as Christians, regardless of whether they're heard or not, we should be sharing with what is right.